Hi, I'm Brian Luce from the University of Arizona. Welcome to the Fred Fox School of Music Recording Studio. I'm here to play for you the second excerpt for the 2020 TMEA All-State Auditions. This is the second one written by Andersen. Now, I played that entire etude simply to give you the context, as I mentioned, in the opening cadenza, the middle cadenza in bar 33, and then the actual full-fledged melody that occurs in bar 43 and 44. The reason is that it's very easy to play twice the rhythmic duration at the very beginning without that context. That's not the relationship that he wrote there. He wants it to be really twice the tempo, or half the duration of the rhythm, but with that sort of ebb and flow. It has that ad libitum right there, and the long is, of course, over the first G flat, but not over the rest of it. So we want to keep that in context. So that's going to be an important element of that, and it's an easy little spot to miss, just like in the first one, that dotted 16/32. What will make this etude much easier in so many ways is obviously going to be use of your B-flat lever fingering with the C-flats that are in here, and, as I mentioned in the previous etude, anchoring with the third finger on many of the G-flats. You'll find that's really, really helpful with many of the places. And also, something I called pre-fingering, where you set a finger before you really need it, especially for the low register. So for instance, in the second full bar, when you play the low D flat, you can put your pinky down on that D flat key before you get to it. In that way, the D flat will speak for you. Otherwise, if you move it down at the last second, there's a chance that it might not come out. Or you're going to jam the note, because it's actually pianissimo right there. That's the softest color. As you play the gruppettos, the turns, there's a lot of consideration. Do you want to play it as an even gruppetto on a duple subdivision? Or do you want to kind of let it kind of amalgamate into the triple time that's going on, the compound time? Where you kind of open it up and in essence play the C flat a little bit earlier. Again, the lever is going to come in very handy. When you use the lever, just remember, it will become an anchor fingering, so when you play the A, keep it down. And then you just have to reach over and grab the F. It's fairly close. You don't ever have to hit the lever smack dab over here on the center, and of course for me I hit another key, but you can hit it right over here towards the edge and then just go to your F as you play the next note. Same thing in bar 4. If you pre-anchor or when you finish playing the D flat, if you keep your fingers down, one of my favorite fingerings to keep that third finger, the second and third fingers, and the D sharp key, because then when I play after the breath, the E flat is stable. Sometimes the E flat can be a little bit crack oriented, just simply because of maybe the quality of the breath, or if you have any delay in getting your embouchure into place before you have to play the next phrase. What really becomes imperative in this etude is that it's very smooth. It's very even, not only throughout the registers, but the color of vibrato tells the story. The notes have their own story, but I think your vibrato and what you create in your own storyline is going to captivate the listeners, the judges, obviously, in that case, by giving them a narrative, some place to go. So again, in that passage you could see where I kept the fingers down, the anchorings, and where it makes it smoother and easier for you. You're not going to have those little cracks that just sometimes happen because you're grabbing the keys around it. What I would recommend, as you do play the low D flat in the second ending, that's bar 14, then just, again, like I mentioned in the previous etude, just stand up a little bit taller and the low D flat will speak easier. That's going to be easier for you to execute those notes as you play along. Everything else works fairly well and fairly clearly. There's a great fingering method you can use for playing in the upper register, especially top Fs, F sharps, and even As. Instead of using the D sharp key, which you need for the F sharp and definitely the A, not the F, but for all three of those fingers, you can actually switch over to the C sharp key. And that's going to give you a great deal of softness as you play, and it doesn't allow the note to go flat, so you don't have to worry about trying to strain to hold the note up. So that makes a really, really controllable fingering as you play, and then you can, again, keep your vibrato moving throughout, because sometimes if it's a little bit flat and you're trying to keep it up, you'll get the, which is not the color you're wanting to go for. So use the fingerings to help make it easier on the embouchure. As we play the portato marking that occurs in bar 31, you still want to have the narrative of your vibrato as you play. You've just come off of this really lovely arpeggio. And as I'm sure you just saw, you can see where that third finger stays down the entire time. It makes it so much easier for that arpeggio to come out one to the next. And even if, when you play the cut in there, as you play the last rallentando, By moving the fingers beforehand, it's not going to affect the B flat in any way, shape, or form, but there's no finger glitches because it's much easier. The reason why we get so many finger glitches on the fourth finger is that it's opening up the G sharp key rather than just closing. So it actually has to be opened up at the same instant these close down, which is actually a little tricky because most of the time it opens up as we touch the keys, which means it opens up early. So in this case, I don't have to worry about it. Eliminate that variable. So it's all about facilitating the smoothness in your playing. Most of the time we'll give up vibrato color or dynamic or a particular style of articulation just simply because the plumbing isn't sealed off correctly. So use those pre-anchorings and those anchor fingerings to really help you create the narrative, the melody that you'd like to have in this etude.